This is awesome, man. I was actually last night I was listening back to the first interview we did, which was 2016. Would you believe? Man, that was a trip listening back to that. Well, guys, I am back, and you are watching Nerdly Out Loud, the official podcast slash YouTube channel of nerdly.co.uk, your favourite British home for all of your news, reviews, and exclusive interviews. And this time, I am steering away from the Romford sessions for a quick hot minute, and I am bringing you an interview. But first of all, please do, there are a load of little trinkets and buttons down below. One is a like, one is a subscribe, and one is a bell. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell. The bell is a notification bell, and it will tell you every time that we drop a video. So you don't have to go out there and listen to your local town crier who tells you we've just dropped a new one, because the notification bell will tell you. Yes, I'm back. And like I say, we are steering away from the Romford sessions. We've been doing quite a few of them. It has been awesome. We are teamed up with them. They love us. We love them. And most of all, they all love me. And that, as they say, is what matters. Please do, though, check out those videos on the channel. They are below. We've done Bad Candy, we've done Black Moon, and, well, VHS Forever was the most recent. I thoroughly enjoyed that interview, with Spencer joining me to interview Mark Williams, the director of VHS Forever, Once Upon a Time in Camden. But I took a trip down memory lane. I got into a time machine and I went back 5 years. It was Mr. Eoin Macken, a truly phenomenal Irish director with a hell of a talent. His movie Leopard had just dropped. It was a passion project he made with Tom Hopper, who you all know from the fantastic Umbrella Academy on Netflix. Why? I'm sorry, I have no idea why I had headphones on there. I wondered why everything sounded a little bit strange. Yeah, just get rid of those bad boys. So yeah, Owen, I watched his movie Leopard. Depending on where you're from, in certain territories, the movie was called Cold. It's a fantastic, wonderful, kind of gritty Irish tale that I always likened to the likes of the best of Shane Meadows. I truly think his talent knows no bounds. The man was also a lead actor in the TV show Merlin, which was a British BBC television show, and it ran for a few years. It was super, extremely popular, and people loved it. He then turned up on CBS's or NBC's or one of those, three-letter channels over in America, and the show was called Night Shift, a fantastic medical drama that my wife and I both love. And then he also turned up in Netflix's Night Flyers, which was the George R. R. Martin sci-fi epic, which only got one season, and boy, did they screw that over, because that was to show that you get going series 2, maybe series 3, but they just didn't give it a chance because it's Netflix, and anything that they make very rarely lasts. However, if they buy something in, Cobra Kai, it lasts. It will last because it's already got a following and a fan base. So, anyway, that's 5 years ago. We cut forward. Owen has made a new movie called Here Are the Young Men with a phenomenal cast. It's a coming of age kind of tale set in Ireland about a group of young lads who have just left school. They have the world at their feet. They are getting their first year of true freedom. But of course, as we all know in those formative years, it's also pretty much your last year of real freedom. And that's kind of what the movie's about. That's what's going on there. Like, they go out, they have a bit of shenanigans, they start doing some drugs, they go to some raves, they start living their best possible lives until there is a little bit of an incident that totally just blows that out of the water, and then the three lads start to deal with things in very, very different ways. It's a story we can all relate to. It's happened to us in our lives. You had those friends when you were younger, and I don't know, like, things just begin to change. Like, your priorities begin to change. A girl comes into the frame, as it does in this movie. One of you kind of wants to get on in life. The other one's just like this tortured artist. Like, we all had that group of friends. You may have been one of that group of friends as well. I don't know. That's just the way it is. And that's what this movie's about. And that's why this movie absolutely bloody works. I loved it. Owen is fantastic. He just directs the crap out of this movie. And the leaps and bounds he has made since that last movie are just insane. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. It's edited very well, considering like those dance scenes are not very, like the rave sequences are not very easy to do and get right, because he's trying to hit on certain tones. And if the music doesn't match the visual, then the tone is gone. It's dead in the water, and you may as well just give up on your movie. Owen keeps a hang of it all. And this cast, Dean Charles Chapman from 1917, oh my God, in the leading role as Matthew Connolly is just wonderful. Finn Cole, brother of Joe Cole. Joe Cole we all loved in Gangs of London. Both the brothers are in Peaky Blinders. I tend to think that Finn Cole gets overlooked a little bit because of his brother Joe. I truly think he's a great actor. And in this movie, playing Kearney, wow. Yeah, just Ferdia Walsh-Pilo from Vikings, the TV show. If you know me, which most of you don't, which is a shame, you should get to know me. I'm a massive, huge fan of Vikings. So to see a character from that movie, from that TV show, head into this movie, I was absolutely ecstatic. Not only that, but Travis Fimmel pops up in a completely bonkers different role to anything I've seen Travis Fimmel do, and I freaking loved it. Anya Taylor-Joy, she just broke out on Netflix. This is an actress who's been due a breakout in a long, long time. That she's such an incredible actress, and as Owen says during our interview, you know, it's not a case of like if she wins an Oscar, it's when. It's gonna happen. She's wonderful. She's absolutely wonderful. Even in that crappy Mutants movie, she's pretty damn good. So yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy's in there as well. Absolutely loved her. Conley Hill, another Game of Thrones actor and veteran, is up in there, but we all know Conley from many other movies as well. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I am going to get straight into the interview with Mr. Eoin Macken. It was a blast from the past. Again, I interviewed this guy 5 years ago, and I listened to the interview the night before we spoke, and it was so weird. It was like this weird, trippy vibe. Like, it was almost, it must have been like my third or fourth interview, and coming back 5 years later, sitting down with the man, it was like talking to an old friend down the pub, which is something I have always said about the way I like to do my interviews. It should always just feel like we're down the pub having a drink. It works for me. People seem to take to it. And Owen, thank you again. It was such a pleasure to speak to you. You've got some fantastic projects on the horizon, some things he told me about off camera. Not many, but some. And I will be checking out everything you do going forward. Is this movie a perfect movie? No, it's not a perfect movie. But again, show me a movie that is perfect, and I'll show you a goddamn liar. But I did thoroughly enjoy it. It hits on a lot of tones and a lot of feelings that I was vibing on back then in my formative youth. So it is a winner for me. I just wanted to throw that in there because I know a lot of people just like... So please do check out Here Are the Young Men. It is out on digital. Signature Entertainment have released it in the UK. So please do check out the movie. You will love it. And if you do love it, hit me up in the comments below. Let me know what you thought, because let's keep the discussion going. And this movie deserves to be talked about. It's fantastic. Owen,
your car is broken,
let's get into the interview, buddy.
I expected more from you, Matthew. Is this who you want to be?
They say the summer when you finish school is the best time of your life. Your final summer of freedom. When you become a man. It's important. We just didn't realize how important it would be.
Boys, we're free.
I love you so. I think you look great pregnant.
Has anyone ever told you you have an extremely punchable face?
I saw a girl get knocked over today. She died, but you're fine. Yeah?
Doesn't add to me.
Jokester, Kearney! Well, lads, final big blowout of the summer. God is in his church. Ladies and gentlemen, the real man. What was was in the bag, sugar? What do you think was in the bag, Matthew?
You knew what he was like. I told you.
So hello everybody and welcome to Nerdly Out Loud, the official podcast of nerdly.co.uk, your favourite British home for all of your news, reviews and exclusive interviews, of which you have right now. And this is a little bit of a blast from the past for me. Anybody who knows my previous podcast, the 365 Flicks, back in 2016 I interviewed this director, and he blew my mind back then with a movie called Leopard. Depending where you were based, the movie was actually called Cold in certain countries. If you saw the movie's fantastic. Darling, 2 seconds. Sorry, my daughter's trying to get into the studio now. 2 seconds. Sorry, pal.
Yeah, no, of course. You should get her in and get her to do the opening blurb.
Oh, she'd be better than me. Trust me. Come here. What's the matter with you? There's a bee in your tent, is there?
No, there's a bee in my room.
This is Owen.
Hello.
Look at it. Owen.
Hello.
You want to say hello?
You say you have a bee. Hello. How are you? Do you have a bee in your tent? That is incredibly lucky. You know, bees bring good luck. You're incredibly lucky to have a bumble. What's her name?
This is Cora.
Cora. Hey. You have a fantastic haircut, and you got a beautiful dress.
God.
Hey man, you know, see that's basically locked in a microcosm, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I saw Leopard. Thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Really touched me in a place that, you know, many other movies kind of fail to, and it sort of stands shoulder to shoulder with the likes of Shane Meadows. I remember saying that to you, like it really kind of just hit me in that sort of level. So I got in touch and I interrupted your game of paddle tennis on Venice Beach, I'm sure it was. So yeah, Owen, yes. How are you?
That was it. I'm good, mate. I'm good. God, I haven't played paddle tennis in a long time because they shut down the paddle tennis courts because of COVID.
Exactly.
And I don't even live in Venice anymore. I live in a storage unit now since that. I've been good. I'm good. I remember when we talked to a Leopard. You know, Leopard was I love that movie. That was a small little indie thing that myself and Tom pulled together, and I remember talking about that. We were very proud of it. It was very much a labor of love. But yeah, good to talk to you again.
No, it's great, man, and I'm super happy that you've taken the time. Your new movie, Here Are the Young Men, recently, darling. You're gonna need to go out, darling. You're just gonna keep distracting me.
Oh, she's great.
This is going to be awesome for editing. Yeah, so your new movie, Here Are the Young Men, is currently out doing the rounds, and from all accounts, from what I'm seeing and from my own point of view, doing really well, man. And I really wanted to reach out and get you on this episode because the leap between these two movies in your directorial style is just huge. I was massively impressed when I watched this movie. But first of all, how have you been keeping during this mad time?
I've do you know, I don't know. It's been I have no sense of time anymore. Like none of us do, you know. You kind of it's just everything's just so weird, and you're suddenly like you haven't talked to people in a year, and it feels like it's only been 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we haven't seen each other since March the previous year. But I haven't had a terrible time because I've been lucky enough to be working and actually end up shooting another movie in October in LA, and I just spent the time just basically writing. I mean, I haven't written as much as I could because I kind of you get eventually a bit sick of doing the lockdown stuff, don't you? Where there's a period of time and then you're just like, all right, and this is enough now. But I've been good, man. I've been good.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. And it's what I seem to be hearing from a lot of the creatives and guys like yourselves is like the writer side of you've been training for this your whole life, whereas the director side of you just want to be out.
I mean, the writer side of you, like it's actually, you know what? It actually feels like there's more pressure because you feel like you've all this free time and you should get stuff done. And then that actually makes suddenly writing becomes no fun because you're like, oh, I've got, you know, instead of going, I've got 4 hours today to do some work, you're like, I've got 24 hours to do this every day. And then you end up doing less work because you end up just kind of, I don't know, I've become really bad at like functional use of time. Goodbye. I used to be quite good and use a lot of time productively. I don't know how you feel about it, but I found I've used my time less productively than ever before because there seems to be more of it because there's nothing happening.
Yes, I'm kind of the same because obviously, like through doing a podcast and doing interviews and everything, and it was getting kind of hard because I sort of took on like a bigger role in my day job, so it was getting kind of hard to get things done. And then all of a sudden, the lockdown happened, and it was like I had all this time, and of course, guys like yourself couldn't go anywhere, so you weren't going to say no to an interview. It was kind of like,
oh, that's cool. Yeah.
so
So you've been having a great time.
in that sense, it was good. But as you say, because I felt like I now had all the time in the world, I wasn't necessarily productive.
It's weird, isn't it? Because you kind of feel like you should be. I mean, yeah. I mean, we did it. Look, I did do and we did write and direct and do post. We did an entire feature since last May. So
Nice.
I think that really, I guess that's productive enough.
Oh God, yeah.
Fair. Yeah. But then eventually I just got so sick and tired of just having. So I haven't done much writing the last few months because I've just been like, all right, I just. But I'm in Melbourne now, which is actually open, and I can go to music. Well, apart from lockdown at the moment, but yeah, I think it's a point now. I think everyone just needs no more lockdowns and stuff to just finish and just go back, whether or not that's not really hard to see.
Definitely, I'm with you there. So you're in Melbourne. Are you working over there? Are you on something, or is this a
Yeah,
vacation?
I'm doing it. No. I'm doing it. I'm doing an NBC show here.
Oh, nice.
So the shooting here, which is pretty great, and so yeah, we're kind of in the middle of just finishing episode 2 of 10. So I'll be here a while.
Is this I know you'll not be able to tell me a single thing about this one, but is this La Brea?
It is a rare, yeah. I wish I could tell you. I'd actually listen. It's one of those projects which is really high concept, and every time I read an episode, I'm like, oh, it's actually incredibly fun. So it could be really, really cool. So yeah, but also I am not allowed to say anything about it.
No.
I was explicitly told it. No. I went and I was like, oh, I'll just go post a photograph on set because I thought that's what they like you to do, you know. And I was like, yeah, I'll just post some selfie of me in a trailer because they'll love that. No. It was suddenly the next day we had our social media meeting, and it was like, so just so you guys know the rules, and I was like, okay.
No, I've seen little bits and pieces, but they are being very tight-lipped on this one. So yeah. I'm quite excited to see it. And as far as high concept goes, I'm a massive Lost fan, X-Files fan. So, and even Night Flyers, which you were in yourself, man. I was cut short way too soon, and I really wanted to see more of that world. But
I know it's Jeff Bueller, the showrunner. He's a great dude, and I think that was just there was so much more to explore with that.
Definitely.
But it just almost I think they actually just needed more time in that first season. There was so many ideas happening, and it just needed a bit more time to kind of properly get into some of it.
It's definitely a problem right now. And I don't know if you're noticing it yourself. You maybe are with being in the industry, but nothing really seems to be getting the time to breathe right now. There's a lot of TV series over the last couple of years that I think one of them was Daybreak that I watched. I absolutely loved that show, and I thought season 2 of this is going to be absolutely immense, and then they cancelled it. But it just seems to be happening quite a lot. I don't know why, but gone are the days of Grey's Anatomy with 28 series.
I know. They're still in the hospital. That is the hottest concept. They finished Grey's Anatomy and realized they're actually in some weird timeline where they keep seeing themselves all the time, right?
But while I'm on that, and my wife will not let me go. She'll not let me off if I don't ask this question. So, night shift. Is there a chance that this is ever coming back? Because I remember reading a producer saying that there were still stories to tell. We loved that show.
Did you? Man, well, honestly, I love that show, and I think that's actually partly why I made Grey Elephant, because I worked with loads of people on night shift again, like Jill and Brendan and Mac and JR. We're actually the same first AD and a lot of the same crew and stuff. Hey!
just come on, darling. You need to go.
Just tell me, Cora, the night shift is going to be your favorite show when you're going to.
Oh, you go. It will be. Oh, you go. Now we got heavy into that. Again, like I say, I think it was one of the main reasons was after speaking to yourself and everything, and I got to see that you were in that show, and I started watching it, and obviously Ken Long is just levels. There's just levels to that guy, and your chemistry together was just great on the show. So I had to ask because I would love another crack at
No,
that
man, I
show.
honestly would love to. I mean, God, I love Ken. Ken is so great, and I was so devastated when Ken left me because he wanted to go. He wanted to spend more time in New York, and
Mm,
and he because his wife needed a kid, and I was so sad when Ken left. Ken and Freddie, but I think with that show, I don't. It's one of those ones because it's a big network show that there was a chance they would carry it on to a
yeah.
different place, but then unfortunately not. And it's a shame because I feel like it was just beginning to get its stride in those
Mhm.
last two. It was kind of beginning to become what Gabe and Jeff had always wanted it to be. But yeah,
Well, I had to
I
ask
mean,
that one.
we still had a great run. We had 4 years of it. And I
Oh,
thought,
God, yeah, God, yeah. And it was four solid years as well. Like, one of the things about that show that I found was there wasn't really a shaky season. You normally tend to find with a show that goes for any longer than maybe 2, 3 seasons, there's usually one that you're sort of like, that wasn't the greatest. They're kind of just building up to the next one. But with the night shift, it just seemed to be high octane all the time, just keep moving. And that's one of the things I loved about the show.
yeah. Man, it was honestly one of the most beautiful shows to work on, just because it was we had like the best crew and just the best group of people, and it really was. It was honestly like we had the most enjoyable time working on a show because everyone was super sound. The crew all knew each other really well. It was just a lovely group of people. It really was. So it made the whole thing, and that's really important. I think that's what happens when shows do well. Is usually you get people who just really all care about each other, and then it
Mm.
means you end up just, there's just that spark of difference sometimes between something being really watchable and just being slightly off. And I'm not sure that's always the case, but like it was similar to when we did Merlin, that everyone like really connected, and it was a solid group, and I think that's the same thing that happened on the night shift.
Awesome, awesome, man. But we are here to talk about your new feature. Here are
Oh
the
yeah.
young men. This is the one I want to really, really get into. I recently watched this. Obviously, the guys at Signature sent it over to me and asked me to give it a little review. Loved it. Couldn't wait to speak to you about it. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about this movie? I believe it's based on a book. It's adapted from a Rob Doyle book, and a little bit of what made you want to adapt this one.
So it's a romantic comedy.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a romantic comedy.
It's not a romantic comedy. Yeah, it depends how twisted your romance is. Hey, so famous works. Yeah, it's based off a novel of the same name by an Irish guy called Rob Doyle, who's one of Ireland's. I think he's one of the best writers out there, and he's a very transgressive writer in terms of how he very pulpy, and he kind of approaches subject matters in a very raw way, and it's essentially it's vaguely pitched as being a kind of a transgressive coming of age story, but it's not really. It really is a story about these kids finishing school and kind of trying to figure out who they are, but with this heavy influence of these sort of media influences around them, and the development of one of the characters becoming a I guess a sociopath, and how that is essentially affecting them, and basically the moral choices that these young men have to make, dealing with with this character, and kind of dealing with toxic masculinity, and dealing with understanding relationships, and so yeah, is that
So it is a
appropriate?
comedy then.
Definitely a comedy.
No,
Yeah.
I think that answers it well. But one of the things I wanted to know, because you've also written your own book, which is sort of
Yeah.
based around the same kind of period or the same kind of
Yeah.
subject matter. Like, why adapt this one and not yours?
So my book, Kingdom of Scars, that's how I ended up reading Rob's book, because I was just very luckily got nominated for an Irish Book Award. And
Nice.
the only reason I say that is is because I then read all the other books that were nominated, and Rob, because I wanted to read them. I was like, all right, this is fun. What's this competition? I read Rob's
What
book.
am I up against?
Exactly. And then Rob's book didn't even win. This great author called Louise O'Neill, her book won. But Rob, I was blown away by Rob's book. And my book is set in a similar time period because we actually both finished school around the same time as this. But my characters were all 14, 15,
Right.
and it was a lot more innocent. And Rob's characters are 18. And so I brought in some elements of the characters or some elements from my book into it, like in the movie with Mr. Landerton and that type of stuff. That's more based off from my book, and a bit of the relationship with Matthew and Jen. So I used some kind of connective tissue from that, but really Rob's book was a lot more mature and the characters a lot more mature, and it was also a lot darker, and the thematic content was a lot heavier and also a lot more interesting because morally there was a lot more kind of like corridors these characters went down.
So when you say you took little bits from your book as well, was there any sort of like, I don't want to get too deep or anything, but was there any sort of your own experiences or kind of thrown in there as well to make up parts of this?
Honestly, I actually can't fully remember because if that makes sense. No, because once I started writing the script and I started adapting it, I then began to change things and move stuff around, and then I started brought in some kind of elements of my book initially into the character of Matthew and brought in some of the character, but not, and then just as I said, it's set in Belvedere, which is a school where my book is set, and the college, and we end up using that, and same Mr. Landon, but then it kind of obviously becomes very much up. So it's only just elements and that was especially at the start to give it that certain little bit of innocence and naivety where before it kind of goes into where it goes. And I actually can't really remember at this stage because if it just you hear the Omen just became its own identity as a script in the film, that I kind of any rewrites end up doing of the previous year or two before we made it just became about the rewrites of the actual film itself, and there was and that's kind of so it just grew into this thing.
Love it. Just an amalgamation. I love all that stuff.
Yeah. But that's what I think it should be, because I also didn't want to. And I spoke to Rob about this. I didn't want to just go out. I'm just going to do a direct adaptation. I'm just going to try and just like fit everything, but try and make it a linear story, because Rob's book is actually quite dense, and it's the characters are very complex, and the voices are all very complex. And I was like, I'm going to make my own version of this, and it's going to become its own. It shouldn't be a direct. If you read the book, now you're going to watch this as a film.
Yeah.
It's a compliment, but it's also a very sort of slightly different take on the story, and there's stuff that I leave out and stuff I bring in, and that's on purpose, because I wanted to create. I didn't see the point in just going, here's a mirror of what the book is. I wanted to kind of,
So the movie is set in a pretty specific time period, but it doesn't kind of feel that way. I generally feel like it could have been sort of any time, and that's what some of these great sort of quote unquote coming of age films are and stories are. The likes of Kids and Get Guy to Recognize Your Saints, couple of my favorite movies, But this one really did hit me in a sort of way, kind of, because it turns out you and I are not far off the same age, so I kind of left school round about sort of the same time as well. So it does sort of hit on the the anxiety of coming away from school and the trepidation of what's next and everything. How important was it for you, and how exactly did you go about sort of hitting on those themes and nailing them down?
It was really fundamental, I think. I didn't, and it's interesting you say that it didn't feel like an Irish story. That was really important. I wanted it to feel like a universal story, so that you could basically transpose the characters and the storyline to to the UK, to Germany, to Canada, to France.
It worked.
Yeah, but I wanted it to feel like even though it's set in Ireland and it is an Irish story, that it didn't matter that it was set in Ireland. There was obviously fundamental things that existed that made it an Irish story, and also like how it links to going to America and this and that. But I also thought that this is a story that, if it's done correctly, it should be universal in terms of the themes. And so I'm not sure if I'm kind of moving away from what your question was, but but yeah, I wanted to set it because that was also the same time that I left school and was the same, and I understood what it was like at that stage to be 18 or around, give or take a couple of years, of when you're leaving school and just figuring life out, and also the changes that were happening in Ireland at the time, culturally and economically. And I think the kind of the general tenor in the world at that time with America and with Iraq and so
Oh God,
forth,
yeah.
as it, you know, so there was a certain kind of feeling, I think, that was kind of permeating, and that's kind of what I wanted to get in as well.
It was a strange one because I was kind of like sitting watching it, and obviously I knew it was sort of set around about 2003, and I'm sort of sitting there watching this movie, and I'm feeling a certain kind of way about some of these characters, and then you're right, when they start talking about sort of the war and everything like that, I'm sitting there thinking, shit, that was happening when I was that age, like, and that's when it really struck me, like this movie could be anyone's movie, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the thing was really important. So I remember watching that type of stuff on TV, and it
Yeah.
was like I think it was for me anyway, being that age when it was like you're younger and stuff doesn't seem as prevalent, and it wasn't like we were kind of. I think this is the first time for our generation or this generation that was like, oh, this is a really serious thing that's going on at this stage, and um, I think that was an important kind of generational thing that happened, and that was important then to kind of feed into the aspects of what Kearney's character and how they all kind of felt about it, and also how people felt about it, not even realizing it,
Mhm.
you know, because there's a general kind of, yeah.
Definitely. And speaking of Kearney, and speaking of your cast, mate, this cast is insane. You've got Dean Charles Chapman in there, who everybody's just seen in it in 1917. You've got Finn Cole in there from Peaky Blinders, who I'm just a huge Finn Cole fan. Anya Taylor-Joy, Jesus, she's so good in this movie. And Ferdia Walsh-Pilo from Vikings. I mean, I'm a huge Viking fan as well. How did you go about getting this cast of young, pretty much like they maybe hadn't broken at the time, but they've definitely
Yeah.
broken now? Like, how did you go about getting these guys together?
Well, I had an idea of who I kind of wanted, because it was very specific. First and foremost, I had to find the character of Matthew,
Mhm.
and that was the most important thing. I was like, if I found the character of Matthew, I thought he was actually the hardest person to find, and because he had to have that innocence to him, and also to have that likability, and also because he also had to have that ability to go to a dark place at the end of the movie, because he does become a kind of a mirror, and it does flip. Um, so once I met Dean, I wanted to meet Dean. I met Dean. We discussed it, and straight away I was like, this is who this character is. So once I've met Dean, then I did the same with Finn, and I was just very specific about who I wanted to meet, and I didn't really meet that many people at all, and then met Dean and met Finn, and then that was it. And then Anya read it and she loved it, and so we worked a bit on the character of Jen as well. And I could only find the character of Jen once I knew who Matthew was going to be, and I was like, right, Dean and Anya fit. And it's about finding those pieces that fit. And it was very much about finding four actors that I thought were really, really talented, but also fit as a group, because I didn't want to cast people. You know, there's a few times you're looking at people like they just don't work. It's about finding that balance and going, who's going to work and who's going to fit. And then once that chemistry happens, and then it's magic, you know.
I think it's probably impossible for a young cast of gentlemen not to have chemistry with Anya Taylor-Joy. She's just such a fantastic actress, and I know a lot of people have picked up on her recently because of obviously the Netflix show Queen's Gambit, which unfortunately I've not watched yet, but I've heard it's absolutely fantastic. But she's an actress who has always been on the verge of just breaking out and just becoming huge, and I'm so glad she has, and I'm so glad your movie dropped round about the same time.
You know, no, listen, Anya's been brilliant, because everything. I
Oh,
mean, even Anya's performances in Morgan or Thoroughbreds.
exactly.
I before we cast you, man, I said that I think I said it to Richardson. I was like, Anya will be one of those who'll end up winning an Oscar for sure. And now it's pretty certain that she obviously will. But I mean, I was like, how do you put on these bets? I was like, I don't put gambling, but I was like, can you go into bookies and like create a new bet and go, I want to bet in this person to win an Oscar in like 5 years' time? And I should have done that. And I was like, you know, but then I was like, this seems silly. But now obviously you wouldn't get any money in that bet, because they'd be like, yeah, get out. But at the time I was like, fuck, I really should go in and just put like 100 quid.
and
Create this.
and with them all being so busy and everything, like how easy was it, or how hard was it to get them all together to shoot this film?
It was really difficult, and we only had a very so here's the thing: we only shot the movie in like 4 weeks, and then a couple of days early on for a lot of our kind of running through the street stuff with a splinter crew. We had a really short time schedule because Annie only had 2 weeks. She was meant to go off and do a movie, which then ended up not happening. But at the time, like, her schedule was incredibly tight.
Mm.
Finn was going straight back onto Peaky. Dean was going straight onto something else. Freddie, I think, was about to go into Vikings. So we had this tiny schedule and this tiny window whereby we either shot in August and we had like 5 weeks to prep it, or we just didn't shoot and maybe we shot after, maybe in September, but it would have been a different cast, or we would have shot after Christmas and it would have been a different cast. So it was like, to get all this cast together and then also to get Travis, it was like, we have to just go. So I'd actually just finished. Yeah. So we had, I think I just finished doing Night Flyers and had like 6 weeks to then prep it and then we go and shoot it. And it was a really small window to go and do it, but it's like, we had to do this or we don't. So
It's awesome, and it's just amazing how things like that work out as well. You find that little moment, and it obviously means that it's absolutely meant to be. So it's great. So one of the standout performances, sections of this movie that really, really kind of blew me away, and speaking of Travis Fimmel, by the way, just the game show sections. How hard was it to put these in the, like, when you're sitting down to write this and it not to come across as, I don't want to say ludicrous, but there's a certain amount of ambiguity in these scenes that if you don't hit them properly, it could totally fall by the wayside and it could become something completely different. How hard was it to make sure you got these scenes right, the game show scenes?
the game show scene stuff is something that, and I'm glad you like it, because it's really important to me, the game show stuff, because I really enjoy what it represents, and I think it's also really important. But I knew straight away it was going to be very Marmite type of elements to the film, and I didn't just want the film, the film. There was certain elements that were pushing us to just make this a far straighter coming of age type story, to soften certain things and to sort of take out elements. And there's also a lot left on the cutting room floor. Actually, there's all these other actual scenes from the game show stuff which are just not there, which, because for timing and pacing, and I mean, on one hand, I feel like this movie should have been a few minutes shorter, but at the same time, I actually shot probably about 30 minutes of footage, 30 minutes of completed scenes that aren't in the movie. And a lot of that was linking even more game show stuff and all. And I was really important to me because I loved movies like Requiem for a Dream and
Yes.
and La N and all that type of stuff, which deals with little tiny under. And I just wanted to bring in some of that seriality because I wanted to explore that side of what happens to Kearney's character and then what happens to Matthew's character. And I the most interesting way for me of doing that was to do that in the game show and to use that as this kind of metaphorical sort of world. And it kind of came from like the conversation that Matthew and Kearney have in that metaphorical world when they finally cross over. And that I was like, how do I want to get to this moment where I can do this visually and cinematically, where it doesn't have to be these two characters having a straight conversation, but it is, you're not sure if these guys have actually had this conversation in real life, or if this is, or even which perspective this is. And it was meant to be Matthew's perspective. However, I wanted to keep it slightly ambiguous. And I really wanted to just create this world that could show Kearney's descent into, essentially being depraved and becoming a bit of a sociopath, but also how much fun it was. Because I wanted to explore that from that type of character, how he was actually getting this enjoyment from it, but also being manipulated the entire time. And you're kind of getting to see how he's being manipulated, which also then shows how you can end up being manipulated by the media and think you're in control of it and you're not.
And of course, round about that time, that was like 2003 and whatnot, it was sort of like when the reality TV boom and the MTV boom and everything was kind of in full effect, which is, it's a great use of sort of having that in your story, that it's not over the top or anything, but if you really definitely know how that felt.
Yeah, exactly, and that was the thing. The reality TV show boom was a big part of it, and that MTV thing. What we I referenced that, Dean character references that on the beach and stuff. But I think it was really important because that was when the reality show stuff was just beginning to start at its zenith, and it was starting to affect everything, and everyone wanted to be on TV. But you're also suddenly becoming heavily affected of that almost that Truman Show sense of being watched all the time, which I now think people are just far more used to. And it's like, oh yeah, fine. But at the time, that was suddenly, I think, quite. It just kind of seeped into your bones and became more prevalent. You know, so that's kind of what I wanted to get that kind of sense of what that felt like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when it first was really permeating society.
Definitely hit on it for me, and of course in those scenes you have the awesome Travis Fimmel, who for me can't do any wrong. Just he is an absolutely powerhouse of an actor. Vikings, he's just unbelievable. How on earth did Travis end up playing this role? Because it's not exactly his wheelhouse, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but he only makes it his wheelhouse.
Oh yeah, he does. He
Yeah,
does.
yeah. Travis. So Travis, you know, that character, the cast was obviously really important. And you know, quite a few of the actors in this, you know, I knew I'd worked with before, or you know, we had a chat. But some people, obviously, I hadn't worked with Conleth or Travis before, and Travis just really responded to the character. And then me and him had a long chat about it, and I ended up reworking some parts of the character based off some of his ideas. Like he had some also crazy wacky ideas, like for his costume, and that's the thing. He totally created this character, and he was like, you know, it needed to be a fully three-dimensional form character that wasn't just a cipher.
Yeah.
That was like, he became his own character, and almost, I think, in this kind of American Godsy type way, created this whole person that was meant to be distinguished and also representative of everything that was the media, good or bad or indifferent. And he became this kind of version of the devil, and that's what we kind of discussed, and that's what he wanted it to be. And so his, like, all the kind of the quirks and the costume choices and stuff you see, which are really interesting, a lot of those are Travis's.
That's cool.
Yeah, he just brings in this mad, crazy energy to the whole thing, and yeah.
It's cool as well. You liken it to the likes of obviously Requiem for a Dream. It does lean into that a little bit. I felt some you know, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. I felt some of those vibes going on, which is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. So it leans into that a tiny little bit, but those scenes are great. And how much of a nightmare were they to edit?
No, they were fantastically fun to edit. No, they were great. The only nightmare I had was because we actually probably have another like 3 or 4 of those scenes of Travis returns in the movie.
That's what the DVD's for, though.
I know, maybe, yeah. That's what I thought. That I realized how expensive it is at post production to go and reopen a movie and change stuff. It's a nightmare. I was like, I'm used to doing all this indie stuff on my own bat, so it's like I was like, oh yeah, I'll just go change this and spend the weekend and do these quick times and do whatever. You can't do that. And also legally you can't do that, and there's a whole minefield. So I now understand why directors don't get the director's cut of stuff. Even though, I mean, look, the movie is my cut, but there was just things that you just wanted to have in the film which you just couldn't because, as I said, time, or it was just like I could have made an extra 20 minutes, which I do have, of just like Travis stuff in the movie.
We could always we could always make a petition for releasing the Fimmel cut and get that done.
The Fimmel cut's bananas.
So
but that's the thing about the edit was it was trying to find that balance, and actually sort of unfortunately having to get rid of certain things so that the other things made an impact.
Cool.
But there was stuff that's not in it. I'm like, it meant that the stuff I did put in, it was all stuff that I really cared about. It was really important.
Awesome. So without any spoilers, there's a couple of scenes in this movie that you do generally sit there with your hands over your face and sort of you're shouting at the TV, just stop, please just stop. It is that kind of movie. Like it's not a massively easy watch, to be fair, but there's certain moments that you think something's going to happen and then it kind of, I mean, the way you filmed it kind of leaves it in the sense of, did it actually happen or did it not happen? Which is what I loved about the film. It's one of my favorite parts of it. But was there a conscious effort to kind of take yourself to the edge, but not quite push through it, and then leave it so that the audience is wondering, did it happen? Because what happens in your head is way worse than what you can show on the screen. So,
I mean, that's basically it.
All right.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because I think if you can get to a place whereby you're watching something and you're not sure, you know, I think I think what your thought process and thinking about what it could be is always worse than actually seeing it. And also, I think also with a film like this, you also don't want to make stuff. There is some very unpalatable things that potentially happen in the film, and I was like, I don't need to see these things. You don't need to go this far. But also, if you push stuff to the edge, whereby that if you feel like, oh my God, this is going to happen, and take people there, and then it might not, and it doesn't happen. Like the scenes you're referencing. I don't know if, if it's spoilers or anything, but there's a couple of scenes like that, like with Kearney and Jen and so forth, where the idea is I wanted to get it right to that edge, and I thought that's more powerful than actually showing what's happening without the build up to it. And you're like, because once she's, it's that anticipation of this horrible thing happening to characters you care about, which I think is a lot more scary and a lot more dangerous, and also hopefully sucks you in as an audience to being complicit in it, and being complicit and making the other characters complicit. And so and there was things on purpose I wanted to leave where you weren't sure even with Kearney, like, has he killed people, who he's killed, who he's not killed, and that was very important that wasn't obvious. I wanted you to have to think about that, because then it also changes how you see Matthew's character.
I mean, I'm always going to think the best of him anyway, so.
You talk about Matthew or Kearney?
Both men, but I mean, to be honest, it's quite a funny one, because at the start, I'm not going to give spoilers, but between you and I was really, really rooting hard for Matthew from the very start. This is my guy. This is who I'm with for the whole movie. And Kearney he was kind of, I didn't want him to lead my guy down the wrong path. And then towards the end of the movie, there's sort of like this flip somewhere where I was kind of actually rooting for the other guy, and it was a strange one, and I guess that was your intention, or that was one of the things you want people to think about, what they would do in that moment and what their reaction would be to these situations. But yeah, I ended up rooting for Kearney towards the end. I don't know what that says about me, though.
And that probably feels weird to say, right? Because but that was what I wanted it to be, and I'm glad that came across that way, because the two characters do essentially flip the further the movie goes on, and that was purposeful to kind of and it was purposeful because there's it's partly because of how Finn's acting is, because his acting is brilliant, but it was also like, you got these characters, he's intoxicating, and he's meant to be representative of that person when you're younger who is doing stuff that is unpalatable.
I think we all had a friend like that, didn't we?
Exactly. We all have a friend who's like done stuff. You're like, hang on, that's not okay. Or would he have done these things? But also, if you've got that friend who would he do these things that are really beyond your own moral scope, and how you would react. And you've all those people, I think, that I knew, and maybe you're the same, not all of them, but the ones we know were like, could be like this. They're all engaging, and they're all charismatic. I mean, if he was a horrible, spiteful character, then you'd expect it, and he wouldn't give a shit. But it's the fact that he's got this charisma that is intoxicating, and then makes you question yourself. And that's what I wanted. I wanted you to hopefully flip and be rooting for Kearney, and also for him to convince you about and I think he does a very good job of almost convincing the audience, or convincing Matthew's character, that he hasn't done anything wrong.
Yeah. And it does make that, I mean, again, no spoilers, but it makes that final choice all the more, either way, it's either heartbreaking or you love it. It's, that final choice that you get towards the end. Yeah, I'm not sure where I would have went. And I don't really know. And I kept asking myself, I was kind of like, would I have done what Matthew did, or would I have not done what Matthew did? But that's the beauty of the movie.
Well, that's the thing, and I actually don't really, and I kind of wanted to leave the movie with that question that if you connect to the movie, that gives you that moral choice that you should consider yourself. Would I have done this, or would I not have done this?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to answer that directly with the film. I wanted to leave it with the open question for yourself as a viewer to see how you felt about it.
Well, definitely for me, you hit that. Now, I do need to ask, because Owen, this movie looks absolutely gorgeous. this movie is stunning. You hit on a lot of obviously the time period helps because it was a very nice time period and everything was glowy and everything was we were all, well, not everybody, but some of us were tripping on acid at this point. So, and of course
What names?
oh, definitely not naming names. And with like the musical score, you've got some of the Chemical Brothers sitting in there, which were massive at the time. Everybody was all about that. You've got the sort of the rave scenes, which everybody remembers that. But like your cinematographer, how collaborative was this partnership? Because he really seems to get your vision and you seem to really know how to play with what he's doing. And so how collaborative was this process, and who was the guy? Sorry, I should ask that as well.
Yeah, no. Listen, no, it was. I mean, the movie's coming out in cinemas in Ireland, hopefully in like about 2 weeks, and I'm hoping it's going to do some cinema in other places where we're just kind of seeing what's happening. And I really hope you get to see it in a cinema because this sounds trite. Well, it sounds trite to say because I think listen, some movies. It doesn't not they do obviously work better in a cinema and some don't, but specifically with this, there is some long extended scenes and party sequences at rave with colors and with music, which on purpose I designed for when you're in the cinema. I wanted you to feel like this is all encompassing. Yeah. And you don't quite get that same feeling if you're on your couch in your sitting room at this, unfortunately. But when you're in a cinema, I wanted it to feel like it was big and bassy and you're surrounded and you actually are in a nightclub. And that occurs 4 or 5 times in the movie on purpose. And that was the same with the visuals. We shot it on anamorphic because I was like, when myself and James shot Frank, the Lenny Abramson movie.
Right, the Frank Sidebottom.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a pretty badass film.
Yeah, he's done some. James is really talented, but
so is this is the director of Lockout, the sci-fi one? Oh yes. Man, that's nice.
Yeah. So James is supremely talented, and I we just sat down and I talked to him what the visual references were, and we were like, we came to the conclusion we wanted to shoot this in anamorphic and shoot Dublin in a way that was slightly different to what had been shot before, and shoot Dublin in a way that is if when I first went to New York for the first time, where everything was very exciting and different and visceral and got that sense of just energy and this sense of color. And that was really important to me because the movie's quite dark, obviously, in terms of content. So I wanted it to be as visceral and fun and almost like not poppy, but to give it a lot of that kind of color and a lot of color code through how the characters are feeling. Like when you go through the reds and the purple, and there is kind of colors for all the character designs as you go through it. In terms of like they represent them, and Jen's got her certain colors of purple and pink, and Matthew's got his colors of green and red and blue and all these type of things. And it was just really important. Like if we make this movie as visually interesting as possible, it'll allow it all to breathe and then allow the chaos to happen within it. And it was just about I wanted every frame to feel like it could be a photograph, from like the 90s, and feel like it could be like a Joy Division or Chemical Brothers music video poster type thing, but also still feel accessible, so it wasn't overwhelming where you're watching a music video the whole time, but just gave it that big scope and palette and just was as visually engaging as possible,
which is super interesting considering your first movie was dark.
Yeah. Very true.
I mean, you're absolutely showing a different side of Ireland now. But no, I wanted to bring up the cinematographer because I was generally blown away by this. And you're right, when you're dealing with some of that dark kind of material, just having like some bright lights does sort of make it a little bit more palatable, I guess.
Yeah, I know it does, and I also think it kind of gives it a different energy, and it also allows you to explore these topics. I didn't want to hammer people over the head with it, I mean, like, I love watching Gaspar Noé's stuff, but at the same time, you have to be in a very specific mood for that type of thing, because it can be very draining, and in a great way. But I know this movie is very heavy specifically, but I also wanted it to just have that sense of fun to it at the same time, to counterbalance what everything was, because these guys were having fun, and that's where like the musical elements come in, like the Chemical Brothers and Primal Scream and Joy Division. I wanted it to feel pulpy, and I wanted you to watch the movie and feel like you wanted to do a load of tequila and go dancing. but at the same time, maybe question your moral judgment, and also question your friends.
I mean, I do that on a daily basis anyway.
Yeah.
Definitely back then as well. So yeah, the movie is coming out, and or it's out in certain places, and obviously it's out on digital, I believe. But you're going to be hitting some theaters in Ireland, which is awesome. I really hope that it also hits I was going to say the UK shows. Ireland is the UK, but I also hope it hits England as well, and I get a chance to see this in the cinema, because that would be pretty damn sweet. There are a lot of scenes in there that I do think to myself, that would look great on the big screen.
Yeah.
So what I did want to ask though is, obviously this movie was supposed to come out last year. Was it supposed to? Yeah, it was going to be doing rain dance and everything. How did COVID and the pandemic affect the
Oh,
release of this movie?
I mean, listen. It's not my place to be complaining about that, because in the context of everything,
Oh
releasing a
God,
movie
yeah.
is the least important thing. However, but if I'm allowed, if you'll let me complain about it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sucked because, we couldn't even get all the cast together. I haven't even seen the movie with the cast in the cinema.
Oh man.
We didn't even get to do a cruise screening yet. And like, even with Rain Dance, we meant to close Rain Dance and do a big cinema, and that was meant to be November. And any other, we actually just didn't do a huge amount of festivals last year on purpose, because they were all online, and
Yeah.
we almost got pirated once very early on. And it was like, right, we want to just keep, we just did festivals that were showing it physically, and then there wasn't that many, and and then any of the ones that we could do, that we did get to do, we couldn't even go to. I remember we were in like one in the Czech Republic and in Italy, and I wasn't able to attend because we weren't allowed to fly there, and we did Hainan and China, and obviously no one could fly there. It was just so. And even Rain Dance was when we thought everything was going to be okay. We can do Rain Dance, and then that will launch part of our cinema thing. We couldn't do that, and that they waited 6 months and they still couldn't. And so, yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare, and it's actually currently in a lot of cinemas in England right now, but in the online. So there's a lot of those kind of smaller independent cinemas, I think, like the Curzon and these ones in Chester, and they're all over the place. I keep seeing these little cool English little independent cinema chains. But he's still not in the cinemas yet. So because it's just the way the release has gone, and it's just been. So we were meant to release last year, and then you usually build up through Irish cinema, UK cinema, and go that way. It's just all it's a lot messier right now. So
Yeah, it's been a sticky old time, and it's not been great for filmmakers like yourselves. And there's been a few that I was quite looking forward to, like, because obviously I deal a lot with more of the independent scene and the lower budget scene, and they're the kind of guys that I love to champion and everything. But there's been a few guys who had some really, really exciting releases coming last year, and then last year happened, so it's not been great.
no, exactly, and it is what it is, and it does suck.
Yeah.
It was like you just gotta roll with it, and just hope that everyone's kind of everyone's bought a really cool home cinema system for the last 12 months.
I've seen a few on my social media. I was thinking for a little while back, I was going to extend the studio and have an actual place to come and watch my movies, because I can't go to the cinema, so I
Yeah,
might as well.
yeah.
But
I
right,
mean,
well,
I did the same. I got a sound. Actually, the guy who did our score, Ryan Batesto, our composer, he when I was in Venice during the lockdown last year, and I actually got some cool speakers and a subwoofer off him.
nice.
So I went through all of David Lynch and Oliver Stone's back catalogue from start to finish, and I just sit there, just big bassy stuff with the screen. I was like, as long as I can hear everything and my room sounds as much like a cinema as possible.
See, I did the wrong thing when everybody was binge watching and whatnot. I went back and I started watching This Is England, because I'm a huge Shane Meadows fan.
Yeah, of course,
And
yeah.
you know what? At the start of the lockdown, Shane Meadows wasn't the best thing to be watching.
No,
Really wasn't. Really wasn't. I'd been putting off, The Virtues of Stephen Graham. I'd been putting that off because I'm a huge Stephen Graham fan. I've been putting it off. And I thought, you know what? I've got all this time now. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch that. I really wish I hadn't watched that when I had.
that way. But again, see, that's the timing thing, That's the thing
Yeah.
when you watch. I mean, The Virtue. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's fantastic.
Oh, it's
The thing, I'm sure it's brilliant, but it's like anything. It's like it's all subjective to your emotional feeling at the
yeah.
time. And I think that's what Here Are the Young Men as well. I think if you go in to watch this movie in the cinema, and it's in a you know, Thursday evening and Friday evening, you've had a beer, it's a different experience if you watch this on a Sunday or Monday and you're fed up, because it is because it is a movie that gets into your belly on purpose and gives you a certain energy. Like if you watch The Virtues, it's going to be you got to be in a certain headspace to watch certain types of movies, right?
Definitely. So I'm going to let you go in a moment, but I do want to ask, what have you got coming up next? Obviously, you're over in Australia and you're doing La Brea, which is, I can't wait to see what happens with this. I think this is going to be, from the little bits and pieces that I've heard and from the excitement I've seen from some people, it seems like it's going to be a bit of a smash. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, you'll get the gang back together for Night Shift. So, you know, I'm looking forward to that. But what...
I get the gang back together for Grey Elephant, which is a little indie film we did at the end of October, and it's all Night Shift cast. It's Jill, and myself,
Nice.
Mark and JR and Brendan and Aaron Richards from Gotham, from Merlin, and that movie is kind of a little bit like, I guess it was kind of inspired by the idea of doing like Carnage, Polanski's movie Carnage, and so it's a kind of a, you know, a little kind of black comedy satire on that. And I did a super fun movie with the guys in Millennium called Till Death with Megan Fox and Callum Mulvey, which is super fun. And it's
Callum Mulvey, nice.
Yeah, Callum's great. And that comes out in July. And then I did a horror movie with Brendan Muldowney called The Cellar. So Brendan did like Pilgrimage, which I loved, and so we shot that, and that's coming out hopefully later this year or early next year.
So last year might have been a little bit quieter, but this year and next year is going to be heap lie on. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Right, man. So I'm going to let you go, but one thing I like to do to put people on the spot before we finish is I would like to give you the pitch to get people to watch Here Are the Young Men and why they should.
Oh, mate,
I know. It's the worst part of the interview for you guys.
I think you need to have a whiskey or a tequila or a beer, and sit down to watch a movie that's going to get into your belly and is going to make you feel like you're in a nightclub, and at the same time make you question your childhood and your own moral choices.
I think we all question our childhood anyway, don't we? Owen, again, thank you so much for doing this. It's been absolutely awesome. It's great to speak to you again after all these years. And like I say, the jump that you've made between these two movies, obviously I know you've been honing your craft in the meantime, but the jump between these movies is just phenomenal. Like, I loved Leopard when I saw it, but then when I watched Here Are the Young Men, I was kind of like, okay, this guy's coming in now. He's arriving. So I'm really, really pleased that this movie is as good as it is.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you're doing so well. It's been a pleasure talking to you after all these years again. Thank you for.
It's been mad, man. But Owen, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to let you crack on and get some sleep. And just good luck with everything, and good luck with La Brea.
I appreciate it. Have a good Friday, and tell Cora not to kill the bees.
She's going to love being in this episode, by the
way. So bees are her friends. I'm glad you're doing so well, man. She's gorgeous.
It's been good. It's been good. I didn't even think she would have been. Yeah, she was a baby back then. Jeez.